All right, how you guys doing tonight? We're talking about adrenal fatigue and adrenal fatigue, which is the third part in this month's talks, and we're dealing with thyroid, adrenal fatigue, kind of hormonal imbalances, and we want to focus on how do we fix these things naturally. So not doing bioidentical, not doing synthetics, but just making your body work. You have the parts, make them work, right? And so when it comes down to it, it's the stuff that we do to ourselves, whether we know it or not, the stuff we eat, the stuff we drink, the way we stress, that actually creates that imbalance of hormones in our body. So next week we're talking about thyroid specifically. So we're talking about hyper and hypo and autoimmune thyroiditis. I just had a patient 2 days ago that reversed their autoimmune thyroid. So we see this stuff all the time, but most people with their regular doctors don't see that at all. So we actually offer options, which is nice. So these things are very important, simplistic ways to help really restore it, even if it's autoimmune. Yeah, and we'll talk about some case studies too tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, but next Tuesday. As you guys know, I'm Dr. Patrick Garrett. I practice functional lifestyle medicine. I have postdoctoral diplomates in functional medicine, 2 in clinical nutrition, and 1 in integrated medicine. So all board certifications. And then, I treat patients all around the world. This is
Hi,
Holly.
I'm Holly. I'm Holly Hajjaj. I'm a wellness practitioner as well, a yoga instructor and wellness coordinator here at Affiliated Family Counselors. Always super excited to be here for our talks and to learn from Dr. Garrett, or Dr. G, as I like to call him, Dr. G for genius, I like to say. Anyway, he's just been so helpful and generous to be able to give these talks online. I'm ready to go if you guys are.
All right. So feel free to post your questions as you have them. We'll try to get them answered either during the talk or after the talk, depending on. I think last week we had 95 comments, so we had quite a bit to go through. And I'm going to try to post some of these things either during or after it, but some really cool images that you guys can relate to. So with the idea of adrenal fatigue, the first question is, what is it, and how's that work? So basically, you have these adrenal glands, and they're like little triangles, and they fit above your kidney, and they regulate things like stress hormones and even fight or flight, epinephrine. So they're tied very strongly to things like anxiety and depression, but if they get overused or overexhausted, then they're tied to things like anxiety, I just said that, and depression. So let's back that up then. All right. When they're normally functioning well, right, in like, say, France and Germany and every other country that's healthier and happier than us, then they're actually helping you regulate enough adrenal hormones to overcome and adapt, and enough epinephrine to cope with what's going on. So that little narrow gap that's like this big is your optimal functioning. And if you go too far this way, well, that's too laid back. That's people that just, they don't have enough adrenals, so they're just lethargic. And then most people go this way. So once you pass this line, you start into hyperadrenal functioning. So you're like doing everything, you're just on top of the world, and then you just start to crash and fall apart as you go further down that hill. And I have a picture like here. So that's kind of what we're looking at. That's that optimal part here. And then this is too laid back. You have those friends who they're kind of worthless. They don't do anything, And then there's us who are like, man, we get our job done, GSDing. And then there's this, which is hyper functioning, and then that's just burnout. So that's what we'll be talking about and referring back to when we talk about that kind of chart. What do you think about that? Like you.
I'm really excited about this specific talk because I have struggled with just that. This pushing to get things done, whether you have to or not. Just and also that sort of drive for excellence and that drive for perfection and that drive to produce I have been burning out, and starting with that, and then I'd say about 3 or 4 years ago, I got sick with something respiratory, and I could not get over it, and we could not figure it out, and that was the first time that I was unable to recoup, and so I was kind of hitting that place in the slope where there was this exhaustion and this inability to heal and this inability to come back from being sick. I started noticing I was having allergies. I was picking up every virus that was around, and then just continued to have symptoms like I'd say inflamed joints, hormonal imbalances with my cycle. Until finally, it seems like fairly recently, I just felt like I was burning out and I just didn't have anything left. So I know there are those of you out there who are experiencing these things at some place on that spectrum. And so I'm glad we're talking about this tonight because I feel like it's me. This is me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and what age did that start at?
Well, I would have been
roughly?
35. 35-ish.
See,
yeah.
that's the key. So why is 35 important?
Why was that important? We talked about that a few talks ago.
Yes.
35 for women was the point in time when they start crashing, right?
Yeah. So these days, used to is about 55. These days we're seeing women about 35 is just their breaking point. There's not enough wheat, dairy, sugar, caffeine to mask all that failing and all that anxiety and all that depression, and they just fall apart. I mean, they're hormonally bankrupt at that point. And that's, it's funny because you say that, but good Lord, that's every single female patient that I have and some of the guy patients.
Yeah.
You want to guess why it's more female than guys? More. I think more females suffer from this adrenal fatigue than guys.
Because of their desire to please and serve other people.
Yeah, guys typically are all about that.
No, I thought you said you want to know
why
women at 35.
Yeah. Yes, because women are absolute martyrs. Men are, and again, I'm a guy, but at least that's what the doctor said. So don't. No, that's the other way. Never mind, it's a bad joke. So women at about 35 start to crash because they tend to be very strong martyrs. And so you'll often hear like moms are just like, well, as long as my kids don't have to suffer, my husband doesn't have to do this, it's better if I do this. The coworkers, they just can't do it as well as I do. And so they just take on every single thing on them, and then everything falls apart. Mm-hmm. And guys, kind of selfish. So guys will tend to find any source of pleasure they can. They'll take any breaks they can. They'll distract themselves as much as they can. And it's not to say guys don't fall apart like this, but we see it, I think, less often. Or maybe a little bit older as far as when we see that happen.
Maybe there's some balance to be had. Well, there obviously is some balance to be had by using men as an example to some degree.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and a lot of times, if she'll do it all, well, fine.
Why do I? Right?
Yeah. And I think I see that a lot with patients and myself. I've been married 15 years, and my wife's a go-getter, and it's just like, she does it better, so she's more invested in it. So it's easier just to give up that control and let that person do it. But eventually they pay a price for that, And I often refer to that woman. Typically, you'll see that woman in church that's like, she's a part of every committee. She's doing everything. She's helping with every fundraiser, every fun run. She's just trying to do it all until she crashes and then she leaves the church.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they can't leave their family. So, if they go crazy, then they drown the kids and kill the husband. So we don't want that.
Right. So if you see yourself in any of these examples, stick with us tonight.
Yeah.
By the way, Tiffany said on here that it's not always about me when I was explaining my. Tiffany likes to joke, everybody. Just let you know.
That's right.
It's all in good fun. Anyway, thank you for those who have joined us. If you've got questions and thoughts, start posting those, and we'll get to them when we can.
So we talked about before in the last couple talks that hormones are like money. And so kind of like in your 20s, you're super rich. You don't need to do anything. And you just feel great. You don't need sleep. You can eat crap. You just feel invincible. But eventually you start running out of that money. And then you start getting quick payday loans and stealing from your savings. And basically you exhaust your testosterone, which then steals your, you steal your progesterone first, which then you start to feel sad and depressed. And, then you steal your testosterone, which then you lose your sex drive. And then you steal your anti-aging hormone, which then, of course, makes you age faster. And eventually you steal that little bit of estrogen that you have, which then causes estrogen dominance, which then is PMS and endometriosis and fibroids and breast cancer and all those kind of horrible hormonal kind of dysfunctions.
What I thought was interesting too is Dr. G has these great little handouts, and this one is called The 4 Faces of Adrenal Burnout. And as I was reading through these 4 faces, they all have emotions. Like the first face is the pushing too hard face, that you're doing well and you've got a smile on your face and you're handling it and you're managing it.
That's the Facebook face.
The Facebook face.
I'm doing it all.
Yes. My life is wonderful. And everything's great. And then it goes to this sort of confused looking, kind of dazed looking face. And then as you continue to deplete yourself, you hit anger, and frustration and anxiety. And then you hit that depression. And I think that burnout, depression, apathy, I think that was very, very close to what I experienced and what I think a lot of other people are experiencing too.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, by the time I see people, they're at that very end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when they finally figure out there's nothing they can do to mask that, there's not an amount of drugs you can take, supplements you can take, caffeine. I mean, that's just the bottom of the barrel where they come in.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the anger one. I see that a lot. And not so much just overt anger, but you'll see that. But that frustration with yourself. Because you'll constantly hear of, I used to be able to do this. And that really becomes frustrating because when you're taking everything on and you're holding the world by your shoulders, right? And you're balancing everything and you're just magic to everybody. And you can't do that anymore. It's confusing. It's frustrating. And it makes them angry because I used to be able to do these things. Why can I not just get up and function like an adult anymore?
Right. Right.
And so eventually you don't become the person you want to be at work. You definitely don't become the person you want to be in a relationship. And worst of all, you feel like you're kind of disconnected or frustrated with your kids all the time because you're just at that breaking point. There's a price to pay for having that imbalance.
Yeah. We have one question here from Deborah. She says, is there a test that you should take to find out if you have adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, so one of the best tests is just a saliva test. You can do a blood test, but getting a blood test often will raise your adrenals because you're getting a needle stuck in your arm and somebody's jackassing around and hits a tendon one day, and so ever since your anxiety goes up. So that's not a really good measurement. And you'd have to get it several times during the day, which doesn't really become very convenient. So they came up with a saliva test where you just spit in 4 little tubes at 4 points within the day. So before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner, before bed. And then you send that in, and it actually tests just the free hormones, which are the bioactive ones. So interestingly enough, you produce this much hormones, but this much is bioactive. And so it's really the bioactive one that tells you how well you're functioning. And the test is really good. I mean, I used to do a lot of those tests in the beginning, but the reality is you kind of know.
By the symptoms.
Yeah. And so, someone might pay $200-300 for the test, but I can predict that, yeah. Basically, if you think you need the test, you probably have adrenal fatigue. Which stage you're in or where the high points and low points are during the day. That used to be kind of important because if you're doing supplement-based therapy, then you would titrate that to this. Maybe if it spikes in the evening, you'd do adaptogens in the evening. But if it's low, then you might do adrenals in the morning or something like that. But since then, I've found that if it's predictable, then it doesn't really change our outcome. And so I really don't test that much anymore because you can guess that they probably suck. And so what are we going to do to fix that? Well, we're going to create a sustainable lifestyle, and we're going to stop exhausting our hormones, and we're going to eat for our hormones. And that's how you fix it. And it doesn't matter how bad your hormones are. That's the same fix. Mm-hmm. If you go to England, Europe, France, Italy, wherever, that's why their hormones function and ours don't. It's not anything specific they're doing, but it's that lifestyle part that they're doing. And that's the important thing that we want to get through with these things is when people, they'll do their own thing, and when that doesn't work, they start to feel crappy, but eventually they have to stop doing that thing. They have to just adopt a lifestyle that's consistent with life and longevity to feel good again. And then if something doesn't go right or something doesn't improve fast enough and it seems like we're missing something, that's when it's really important to do lab tests. Okay. So, financially, you're better off saving that money in the beginning and then just spending that money on real food and maybe a bike or,
creating a lifestyle that you could create anyway, no matter what, that is going to help.
Right.
No matter what.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then...
by the way, we will post these. We've had a request for us. I'll make him post these for you. We've had a request for the 4 phases of adrenal burnout and anything else that we can post that we're...
Yeah, so you'll see my head turning and stuff. I'll see if I can't find these as Holly's talking too.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're really interesting, and again, they're not my things. I just found them online when they're ones that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Deborah was asking, she said she wanted to know more about the part where you're just tired all the time, no sex drive, then what? We lose the anti-aging. Then what? We start aging. That was the next part.
I think we
ask for help.
Oh, yeah, we get help. So, a few things. When your adrenals are down, and you say, okay, well, what do we want to do to fix it? So basically, there's 2 parts. We're underfunding and we're overspending. So the key to that then is eat for your hormones. So that means stop eating wheat and dairy that has morphine in there to try to cope, right? Those are coping foods. But they don't help. They actually make things worse. They'll downregulate dopamine so you can't feel good anymore. You have to ditch the sugar. Americans consume 150 pounds of added sugar to their diet each year, which is more than people used to weigh in 1910. So we're like eating a whole person in sugar, and that's new. It took from the dawn of man to 1950 to even get that number that high. And really, 1910 it was 10 pounds a year, which was absurd. So we have to get rid of that sugar, okay? And the way that we get rid of the sugar, dairy, and the wheat, so we get rid of the morphine and the cocaine-like addiction of sugar, is to create ways to downregulate stress, if you will. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then the biggest thing is really that stop exhausting. So in the end, it's called resiliency. And we talked about this on the last couple talks too, is it's not the amount of stress that we have, but how we create sustainable patterns to deal with that stress. And in America, what we do is we eat for stress and we distract for stress. So we watch movies and TV and do phone stuff, and then we just eat.
And then as a last resort, we react to stress.
That's true. That's absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah, and it becomes this kind of vicious cycle. There's an interesting chart here, and I'll post it. So I posted one of those already. This one here. And this shows you basically what happens to us is that we have stress. We don't respond to it correctly. We basically cause more stress because of that stress. And then that causes more adrenals to be produced. That causes more epinephrine, so more fight or flight, more anxiety. And then as we downregulate those pathways, then we end up in depression. And both anxiety and depression, both of those highs and lows of that, cause more stress. And so it becomes this vicious cycle where we just keep self-inducing the same anxiety and same depression. So we'll talk about ways to undo that too. So that's a great question. And that's not that one. So what are your thoughts?
Just that basically what I'm getting from our talks up to this point is that there are two main things that you want to think about when trying to heal hormonal imbalance, adrenal fatigue, which is feeding your hormones, right? Feeding them in a healthy way with good healthy foods, and then not exhaust them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Feed them and not exhaust them.
So there's a couple interesting studies. So one thing as far as happiness, well, we'll talk about that at the end. There's a couple really cool studies that I like for this. One is, and I don't remember who did this study, but they took, say, 12 people, and they put them in a room, and they said one person, they just randomly pointed at one person, and they said, you're in charge. So before they did this, they tested their hormones, their stress hormones, and then they tested them afterwards. Now, the one person that's now in charge, did their stress go up or down?
I would say up.
So that's what I thought. What about the other contestants?
Up as well.
Why would theirs be up?
Because they don't know who this new person in charge is.
Okay.
Right?
And like
they don't know what's going to happen.
They don't know what's going to happen.
Uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the person in charge?
Well,
why would their stress go up?
Because they're in charge of everyone. Like there's responsibility there, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of where I was when I first heard the study. But what was interesting was the person in charge, immediately their hormones dropped. And they explained this from another study from Princeton, that there's only one person that gets to decide. They're the only one that knows what's going to happen. And that control of choice suddenly, dramatically lowers that person's hormones.
That's
their stress
powerful.
hormones.
But
go ahead. So you're right. Everybody else's hormones go up because they're like, what are we going to do? But the one in charge gets to decide, and their stress goes down.
So for all the people who are not in charge,
yeah,
what do they do?
Right. Well, so to build on this, they had this study, and it's the guy who wrote Sapinski or something like that. He wrote that Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers or something like that was his book that he wrote. Really great book about adrenal fatigue. So he did this study with these, I think, hauler monkeys or something, and they looked at the hierarchy of the monkeys. So within monkey society, there's the alpha monkey, there's mid-level monkeys, and then there's the bottom monkeys, right? And so they said, well, do we see this consistent with like the hierarchy of business? So you have your CEO, you have your mid-level execs, and then you have your workers. And so they're seeing if there's a comparison when it comes to stress, quality of life, and longevity. And what was interesting was that, and I again, what do you think? Do you think the CEO is going to have more stress or less stress?
Well, you just said so.
Well, now you change your answer. That's
okay.
Well, what about before? What'd you say?
I was
if you didn't know that,
I'm going to let you take this one.
All right, fine. So when I saw this study, which I believe is on a documentary called Unusual companions. First part's about animals that like a dog and a lion are best friends, and a goat and a tiger. I was watching with my kids. But the second half is all this research. And so I had to go get my pen and pad and start taking notes on this. But the monkey at the top has the least amount of cortisol. So they did hormone testing with this. He had the lowest stress hormones, and then the next monkeys, and the highest testosterone. And the next set of monkeys that were kind of mid-level monkeys had a little bit higher stress, a little bit lower testosterone than the alpha monkey. And then the low monkeys on the totem pole, they were high stress, high cortisol, and low testosterone. So
this is basically a treatise on corporate America.
Yeah. So then they looked at corporate America and they said, does that match? And what they found out the same thing, that the CEO has the highest quality of life, the lowest, actually the longest lifespan, and the highest testosterone, lowest stress.
So we should all go into business for ourselves.
That's right. Just start your own business, call you CEO. So what that means is that it's all based on choice. So that's part of the resiliency. So what does that mean for the low workers? You know, like the workers underneath, it was the same thing. They had the higher stress. And that's because the perception of choice is not there. I have to come to work. I have to do these things because I live in a society that guarantees I will be in debt and working often for very little money and easily replaceable, right? And that's not true in all countries of the happiest, healthiest countries. But that's true in America where we live. So then how do we deal with that? How do we make that work for us? And there was another study that was really interesting, and it looked at people that go to work and they are horrible jobs. And so if their mentality was, I have to go to work because I have to pay my bills, I have no choice, they had the highest stress, lowest testosterone. But if a worker had the mentality of, well, I have bills to pay, so I'm going to go to work today. I have a choice. And if they truly believe they have a choice, their stress hormones went down. At the same job, the same factory, same bosses and managers, but lower stress, even as the worker, even at the low person on the totem pole. Because choice, the perception of choice is the most important thing there. That's really what causes resiliency in those situations where you feel like, I'm screwed, you know? And so you have patients that they'll say, well, I have to go to work or I'll lose my job and I'll lose my house. Well, yeah, you don't have to go to work. Right. You can live in a box. There literally are people living in boxes under bridges, right? We talked about my cat theory about that too. That's an old video. But with that, you have that choice. But if you don't want to live in a box, then you make a different choice. You go to work. But you understand that it's your choice. So then...
It's the difference between feeling like you're at the mercy
right.
of all of these external variables versus... That's powerful. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. In fact, there's another study that people that look at want ads have lower job stress than people who don't. And that's because that perception is I can walk out anytime. When that boss yells at me, I could leave. I'll probably stay, but I could leave.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's why even people who plan vacations have lower stress than people that actually go on vacations.
Wow.
And that's because of all that mental process of all these choices you get to go through. Now, for some people, planning is actually more stressful.
Yeah.
But for some, that's going to be a really interesting...
I think over time we start to lose our ability to think we have choices without knowing it.
Right. And part of what we're sold as Americans is we don't have choices. We're screwed. If you watch,
yes,
you look through Facebook, there's two different parts of Facebook. There's everything's great, my life is perfect, and there's you're screwed, everything's falling apart, the sky's falling. If this happens, we're all going to die.
Either way, you're in a bad place.
Yeah.
Right, and then all of popular television, or most of television, is just ads being sold telling you you're either not good enough or don't make enough. Right. There's something about you that's not good enough that's being sold, that mentality is being sold on television.
Yeah.
In the most subtle of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a patient today that talked about her friends. She'd go visit them in England, and she's like, "Yeah, their place is like 4 times as big as my office. So they have these small little house, a small little cottage, and they have a little balcony, but they just kind of make their food and they eat. They don't watch a lot of TV. They go for walks. They go to the deli every day to get their food, and she said it's just a simple, easy, sustainable lifestyle. And she said it's just amazing that we can't have that here. And that's
when you think you have to have so many material things,
yeah,
right? You have to keep up with the Joneses.
Right. We keep trying to buy happiness.
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Now there's another study from Harvard called voodoo medicine. So we'll talk about these kind of concepts, and then we'll talk about some other applicable things. And the symposium was on voodoo medicine. And so I was just very excited about, listening to this symposium. And I think it's Dr. Samuelson was talking about this. And the whole thing was, is voodoo medicine real or not? And the conclusion was, it's as real as you think it is. So if you don't believe in it, it doesn't work. But if you believe in it, it works perfectly. But what was really captivating to me was a couple of the studies they talked about. And one of them, I always tell patients about, is that men who jump off of skyscrapers rarely die of hitting the ground. They die of a heart attack on the way to the ground. So what that truly means is the thought in their brain that says, holy crap, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm dead, splat. They truly thought themselves to death by believing that something bad was going to happen. Now, I'll tell you this, not me. I would try to angle and hit another building and maybe like ricochet. I would have...
He's got a choice.
The whole way down, I'm like,
down.
Maybe if I could hit this other building, right?
But the idea is powerful.
Yeah.
That's the power of the mind.
So even if I splat, I'm dying to the splat. I'm not going to kill myself in the process. That's ridiculous. So, same thing. If we truly believe something bad's going to happen, something bad's probably going to happen. If we can cause ourselves to have a heart attack, that's freaking amazingly powerful for our body. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time. People are just, I'm going to get sick this year. I'm going to get sick. Yeah, you probably are going to get sick. I'm going to lose my job. Yeah, you probably are going to lose your job, right? So it's really important to tell ourselves what we really want, not what we fear, not what we worry about, not what other people tell us, but what is our real truth. And so on the other side of that, they have another study they talked about where they had surgical patients that came out, so surgical outcome patients, and they had Group A and Group B. Group A they told nothing to. Nobody said anything to these people. It's really sad. The other population, Group B, they told those people, man, we have people praying for you. All these people know you're going to get better. You're going to do awesome. And guess which group had the lowest surgical best surgical outcomes, lowest complication rates, and fastest healing time?
Those that were told that they were prayed for.
Dang it! How'd you know that?
Yeah, just a wild guess.
So that's exactly right. Hope truly allowed them to have better immune systems, better healing times. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. And again, it was just hope, which is free. So, go ahead.
I was going to jump in really quick.
Right.
For those who are just joining us, and maybe for the first time on our talks about hormones, we've got a lot more information on some of our other videos about how the physiology works, how we feed our hormones, how we deplete them. A lot of things that have been building up to these discussions. And so if you have burning questions or feel like maybe you're not getting answered what we're talking about tonight, go and see some of those other videos and ask questions, because we'd be glad to answer those.
This seems like a commercial break.
It was a
and this is NPR, KMUW.
KMUW.
I just have to stop you right now. This is NPR.
And also ask for your donations. You can send those to Holly, Josh. That's $100 minimum to, okay.
At hollyneedstuff.com.
Yes.
So, and I'll post this real quick. Talk about this.
Oh, right.
I'll post this.
Okay.
I love this.
So this one's kind of cool. Kinda. No, it is cool. You can see this graph here, and it's got all these options here on the graph for ways in which you can de-stress or increase your happiness, and it tells you how much each thing boosts your happiness, and then how much time and effort it takes at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you laugh, just simply laugh, that gives you a happiness boost of 12, which is it's over half of the chart, and it only takes what's time and effort? That's
minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. Did you post that one? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I posted that. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to that Huffington Post. And they're all 16 peer-reviewed research things all in one chart. And what I love is again, it's that kind of old school stuff that you were told, but most of it's all dirt cheap free. So when we talk about sustainable happiness, not exhausting your hormones, it's the constant repetition of these things. So standing tall, laughing. So, like if you're stressed, put on Pandora on a comedy station like Jim Gaffigan, listen to that on your ride home, and it will then bring all your stress home, all your stress down. When you walk in that door, you get to be you again.
Right.
Right?
If you put on Jim Gaffigan, I warn you, it will remind you of Hot Pockets, and that might trigger a desire for Hot Pockets or cake or pie. Just letting you know.
He says they have vegetarian Hot Pockets for those who don't like meat but also like diarrhea. So maybe that'll work.
But he's super funny, so that's a good example.
And then if you look at that chart, like the highest that you can get in the shortest amount of time is keeping a gratitude journal. And that's that positive thought part, the voodoo medicine part, which is what was awesome today. Now, like at our table at home, we do the happies and crappies. And so we always say, what was kind of bad today, and then what was awesome today. And so we go through the whole family and we do that at meal times. And that's that constant focus on remembering there are good things. Even though this bad thing happened, what's the great thing that happened out of that?
And you are actually changing your brain when you take the time to do that as well. At the end of my yoga classes, that's also something that we do, is think of something that we're grateful for. Something today that we are or you are grateful for that's specific to your life, and then let your mind dwell on that for a little bit. You're actually reforming, making new neural connections just by having those thoughts. Yeah. So it makes it easier and easier and easier to think those thoughts.
Exactly. It's neuroplasticity, and you literally rearrange your brain with any of these things. And so performing an act of kindness, so that, opening doors, that all those little things that you can do that are nice. I'm always looking out for those things, and almost, it's so weird. I think it's almost a disease for me. But laughing, smiling, walking tall, enjoying a cup of tea, praying, those are all the low time but high amounts of happiness. And what's interesting is they have play with a puppy. Now, kittens would work too. But if your dog or cat bites and scratches you like mine does, that's not going to de-stress you and make you happy, right? That's not going to work. So, and then listening to happy music, that's a very low impact one that gives you lots of good hormone boost. But what I love on here is they have sex on here, and they have it at 14 minutes. So, but it's the happiness boost is 14.
14.
So it's 14 for 14.
What's that measuring on the happiness boost?
Well, that's
the degree of happiness.
Right.
Okay.
So 14 minutes. That's about 10 minutes of snuggling. I think that's included in that. I don't know. And then meditating's on here, but meditating, so it's on that right side. So like you have volunteering, running, meditation, going on vacation, stroll in the park. Those are things that, again, take a little bit more time. And so, if you're doing 10, 15 minutes of kind of mindfulness or purposeful movement, that's very simple. And what you want is to look at that chart and say, what can I implement every day as a part of that? And so, could I put a goldfish at work on my desk? And so when my boss comes in and goes, then you just stare at the goldfish and then your stress goes back down, right?
Right. Instead of a big bucket of candy on your desk.
Yes. Yeah, I have patients that it's rough. I mean, all these coworkers will bring in big things of candy. Set up. No, we're not talking about that. Other coworkers who bring in things of candy, and then the other coworkers who are trying to be healthy are trying to walk past this.
Yeah.
It was my sabotage.
This one
I'm trying to create new
brings
patients.
candy to work.
I'm trying to create new patients.
I
thought it was hilarious.
He does contribute a lot to the happiness at work.
Yeah. Through pranks.
Even if there is some candy involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See that they don't have to live by my rules. I know
choice. Oh, it's all about choice.
I know office staff love language. No, I'm part of the problem now.
I am
part of the problem.
You're creating temptation.
Damn it.
Tina, are you still with us? Tina knows.
So that's not good. I am part of the problem. All right, I gotta stop doing that. So I stopped being part of the problem. All right. So now the phone's ringing because staff is watching this. Like,
probably.
Where's my chocolate?
They're probably right.
So the other thing too, which I really like, is what's called power posing. And so this is another built-in free thing that you can do that actually can cut your stress hormones by 45% in 2 minutes. And there's a great TED Talk about this, and I'll post that, by Dr. Amy Cuddy from Harvard. And she talks about how you can fake it to make it. And I love this. Because if you're like, you come in here and I'm all like this, I look chill and relaxed. So my stress hormones are probably down. But if I'm stressed out of my mind and I go, okay, screw it, I am going to chillax for a little bit, my stress still goes down as if I was relaxed.
He did just say chillax.
Chillax. Because I'm hip. I'm young. I'm like 25 or something.
We're too old to say chillax.
Chillax?
So he's saying that just taking these poses, and as a yoga instructor, that's like huge. Like I would think a yoga pose could also be applicable to that.
Well,
but
yeah.
Putting your body into a pose or a shape, or like he's saying, a power pose, will actually have an effect internally.
Now, guys typically don't have much problem with this, but some do. But it's that look of confidence. So, like coach is hands on hips, chest out, chin up, eyes forward, confident. And if you stand in confidence, you'll actually lower your hormone and lower your cortisol and raise your testosterone. And for women, though, women are taught to be kind of small, and so they cross their legs, they cross their arms, they do this, and those are high stress positions. So literally, if you cross your legs, your stress hormones go up. If it's chilly in the office and you do this, your stress hormones go up, just like you're afraid or scared, but yet you're just cold. And if you cover your neck, that is the highest amount of stress hormones you can produce. And so you'll notice when you talk to other people, they will have all these things going on. And their stress is through the roof.
Yeah.
And so the other part of what Dr. Amy Cuddy talks about is you can cause stress by sitting in stress or standing like a stressful person, but you can also fake it and actually reduce your hormones, and it only takes 2 minutes to do that.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's built in and it's absolutely free. And it raises testosterone like, I think, 25%.
So start standing like Wonder Woman when you start feeling bad.
That's
what
right.
You're saying.
Yeah, so for women, they'd stand like Wonder Woman. For guys, they'd stand like Coach. So, and it's interesting when you watch it, she'll show a few pictures, but you even look online at some of the pictures of different people standing and people in weak position, people in strong positions, and you can kind of guess who's in charge there, who's the confident one, even if they're faking it, right?
Yeah.
So I love that because I love anything that's free and built in. So that same idea of choice, that belief of choice, is a very empowering way to lower your stress hormones. That's free, absolutely free. Your whole environment doesn't have to change. If you listen to comedy on the way home, it's free. Your stress hormones go down. If you listen to praise music on the way to work to kind of get you in the right mindset, it's still free.
Right.
And I love that. So a lot of the stuff that we do to exhaust our hormones are because we don't do the very things that are consistent with life and longevity. And so if stress is high, and this is the key, if stress is high, what are you going to do to lower it? That should be your next question. If you go, crap, I'm very stressed, great, what are you going to do to lower it? You're going to go for a jog, you're going to go for a walk, you're going to find humor, you're going to walk taller. What are you going to do that's built in for free that allows you to have less stress hormones?
Right. What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose cake? Are you going to choose cake, ice cream, and coffee?
Yeah.
Or are you going to choose something else? I do think not knowing what those other choices are is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an important factor to why we suffer so much.
Right. And nobody's teaching this stuff. I mean, that's the thing is, they're not. There's schools now. I saw on Facebook. I reposted those where if kids get in trouble or if they're high stress, they make them do yoga. They do meditation.
Yeah.
And they have totally different outcomes with them because it gives them a tool that they can use.
Yeah.
And so, again, stress is not going to go away, but stress does not kill. Our inability to de-stress is what kills us. And so when you look at the countries that have the happiest, longest living populations, it's because they do this as a part of their life. You know? My wife, she went to a conference in Brussels, and she was like, oh my God, we need to live in Brussels. And she's like, but you wouldn't have a job there because everybody's healthy and happy here. So I'd only be dealing with American tourists or something, you know?
The lifestyle's different.
Right. Everybody's biking, all the outdoor cafes, everybody's walking. They even have like little fold-up bikes that you can just kind of carry around with you.
I wonder what's their average work week, I wonder.
Well, most European countries are about 35 hours.
35.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sweden's trying out where they get 6-hour work days. So they're about 30 hours. But they're trying a few different companies doing that. Because people are most effective. In America, Americans are effective for 15 minutes out of every hour they're at work now. So for 45 minutes or 3/4 of the time, they're all brain fogged and stressed out of their freaking mind.
Overworking people is inefficient and less productive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's crazy because the more inefficient we become, the more work they put on us, the longer hours we do. So where, like in Europe, it might be 35 hours a work week. In America, it's 44 is the average work week. And most people are working 4 hours off the clock just to try to get caught up. And you never get caught up.
Yeah, there's a lot of you out there, I know. I know of some people who are watching right now who work off the clock. Yeah.
And if you look at things that you can change, like this is a pretty good list of possible causes for your fatigue, right? You have poor digestion, which is not eating fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and berries and legumes and greens, or real food. And so they're eating processed crap. You know, like the grocery store, there's 40,000 products. Everything that's in the middle is made out of basically the same processed ingredients. And they're just flavored and textured to look and taste like different things. So then inadequate nutrients, and that's from the poor diet. Inflammation, which you were talking about too, and that's typically phase 2 of stress. When you start to become from like, I'm wired, I can do everything, to I'm wired and I'm starting to get frustrated, that's when you start seeing that inflammatory stuff start. And so that's before they start getting angry. And that's joint inflammation and just histamine inflammation, all that stuff. And then thyroid problems, but thyroid problems are almost always secondary to adrenal problems. And so again, it becomes that vicious cycle. And we'll talk more about that next week. Sleep deprivation, huge thing for Americans. What's the time that the average woman will wake up in the middle of the night?
3 a.m.
3 a.m. Why is that?
Cortisol, something about cortisol.
Yeah, so cortisol peaks at 3 a.m. in the morning. So for a lot of us, what it's doing is getting our heart beating faster, our digestion going, our more oxygen nutrient to all our organs in our brain. So when that 6 o'clock alarm goes off, we're up and we're going. We're great. But if you go to bed with extra stress, then that cortisol peaks too high, and then you wake up at 3 a.m. instead of getting your body ready.
Oh, because your cortisol's already too high by the time you go to sleep.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And so that's one of those things. So another thing, who was it that was asking that? Dupree? I think it was Deborah? Oh,
maybe.
Who was it? But things that we can do, solutions, and adaptogens are a really good one. Now, you don't want to mess with hormones directly, because if you take a hormone, you will downregulate your own hormones. If you take a neurotransmitter, you'll downregulate your own neurotransmitters. But if you take adaptogens, they will help you cope. Now, they don't change the lifestyle, but they will help you cope a hell of a lot better while you're falling apart. Now, the key is to use these so you can start doing all those other lifestyle changes and stop exhausting your hormones. And typically, the most common ones are the worst spellings ever. So anything that sounds crazy is going to help your adrenals. So like ashwagandha, rhodiola, schistosandra, tulsi, which is pretty good. It's a holy basil. Licorice root, not licorice candy, licorice root. What else? It's ginseng, you know, there's a few others. But basically, there's a standard blend. And one of my favorite ones, so if you're really suffering, one of my favorite ones to start off with is Adrenal Sense. And it's like a pink bottle, has a woman on there. But it has like 5 or 6 adrenal adaptogens in there. So these are things that if your adrenals are too high and you're not coping, it'll help bring them down. If they're too low and you're low functioning, you're burned out, it'll help bring them back up. And so it's kind of like a survival thing for us, which is a great product to start with. There's other ones.
I was just going to say the Yogi bedtime tea, right?
That's right.
That's something I keep at home. That is really great and really noticeable. You wouldn't think that teas would be that potent. But the Yogi bedtime tea has a whole list of just those that you just mentioned. The licorice, how'd you say?
Ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha.
That's why nobody beats me at Scrabble.
But it is really great.
Yeah. And, you know, I used to recommend some basic kind of teas at bedtime to help bring down stress so they wouldn't wake up at 3. And, you know, people do it and they'd feel better. But, boy, when I told people to do yoga, well, actually, I had a patient come and say, oh, my God, you got to tell people about Yogi bedtime tea. And so I looked it up and it was like, oh, that's actually pretty awesome. It should be fabulous. And so then I started recommending it. And that is one of the few supplements that, oh my gosh, people are just like coming back. That was a huge difference. And I noticed your voice went up like high and it was strong.
Yeah.
About how much that helps.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
And the best way to take it is to put it in a spoon. And then with a beauty.
Every talk, Dr. Garrett will teach you how to shoot something up.
That's right. I'm still watching my Breaking Bad for the 3rd time.
That's what we're here for.
So. Other than that, a few last kind of wrapping up things would be making sure that you have positive self-talk. So that's I'll get through this.
I have a choice.
I have a choice. Everything works out, not always as you plan. You know, and I gotta say, I don't know if I talked about this, but to kind of be self-deprecating? Deprecating? Yeah. Defecate? Not defecating. Deprecating. I tell patients this too, and I think it's important to know. I'm a person, right? I have the same issues that everybody else has. I don't have all the sickness and stuff, but I have my parts, and I have to figure out how to to rebuild, you know. And I have 4 daughters, and I built my house, and I painted the walls, I built the walls, I did everything, and those dang kids would write all over my freaking walls. And they would use markers and pencils and crowns, and it just infuriated me. And so every time I'd come home and I saw them writing on the walls, my head was just about to explode, and I could just hear this like boom, 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 like this. In my head, I just felt like my veins were popping out of my head, and I would get so angry because they wouldn't stop doing this. And so, you know, there's certain things that you cannot control. Mm-hmm. And kids sometimes are one of those. And so I told my wife at one point, I said, I think I literally am going to have a stroke. I know I'm going to have a stroke. Like it's just killing me inside that they keep doing this. And she said the magic phrase, which is, what would you tell a patient? And I said, oh, yeah, okay, well, it's not the worst thing in the world, yeah. All the stuff. So, interestingly enough, the next time I came home, and they were writing on the freaking stairs, and I started to grit my teeth. I started to go down that road, and I could feel myself tightening up. And I said, girls, I will be right back. And I went out on the porch, and I said, it's not the worst thing in the world. Everything will work out. I've done far worse things as a child, right? Everything can be painted. I took one last big, deep, cleansing breath, and I was calm. I walked back in. I said, girls, you know you're not supposed to write on the walls. Go get cleaning stuff and clean up this.
Right.
And it was amazing that little tiny difference was the difference between being happy and being the person I wanted to be and modeling the person I want my kids to be and freaking out and dying of a stroke.
The challenge is making that choice when it's difficult.
Yes,
and remembering to make that choice when it's difficult.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
Is to not be pushed by that strong emotion. And then something that helps me is I think a lot about putting things in perspective. Like, when I think about people being bombed in Syria, I think, well, the writing on the stairs and the writing on the walls probably really isn't all that bad when you put it in perspective, right?
Yeah. It always can be worse.
Right, so we do still have things to be grateful for. But I was also going to say, I mean, not only just making the choice to have these thoughts or to do these things. I was going to mention practices again. You know, going to a yoga class, going to Tai Chi, learning meditation. There's a ton of great meditation apps. There are great videos for yoga if you can't get out of the house or you don't have the money. There's so many free options. Start doing something like that as well to help you if you're not coping well by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. If the cycle that you're going through isn't working, you have to go ask somebody else to help.
Maybe that's therapy, talk therapy, or just talking to family or friends and gaining some support and learning about some options.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, like what you said, is if you can't pull it together, it's better to go to a class where you just submit and say, look, I don't want to figure this out. Just show me how to meditate.
Yeah.
Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I think that's where a lot of people need to be.
Yeah.
Instead of like, well, let me read on it, let me figure it out, let me process it, and then I got distracted, then I don't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've done meditation and yoga, and it's crazy. I would never do that on my own. Yeah. Never.
Yeah.
Even though I wanted to.
And we offer all of those classes here at Affiliated Family Counselors at the facility here. Also, there is a big difference between attending these live talks and these discussions and being part of them, but then seeing this guy on your own as an individual. There's still a big difference. Now, this is a lot of information that he's giving out, that we're sharing and we're discussing. But still, if you're really struggling and you need somebody to focus on you and your specific world and mindset, come in and make an appointment.
Yeah. And that's what I always say is, look, the information's free. There's tons of information. And if those simple things work for you, great. If they don't, then it's time to probably make an appointment and let's figure out what the hell's going on and how we can get you better. Because you gotta, that's probably the biggest takeaway I could ever have for these things is when people realize, holy crap, I feel better and I could have felt this way for the last 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah, don't waste time.
That's
right.
jacked.
Right.
Just absolutely people get angry about that. That I could have been this good for all these years because I didn't make these choices. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so then they end up in adrenal fatigue because they're so
back in the cycle.
Back in the cycle.
I have one more takeaway.
What's that?
For me, this talk, I think you mentioned it earlier, and it made me think about yoga, but this idea of balance and rest. Like in yoga, the very last pose that we do is called Shavasana, and all it is just resting on the floor for a minimum of 5 minutes. But it could be a lot longer depending on your class. So 10, 15 minutes of just lying down, doing nothing but just observing your world, your mind, without judgment. And so just taking that time to rest is one of the most important poses in a yoga practice, but it's also one of the most important parts of your life, right? Of being healthy. Right. That's where the balance is the rest. And these stress reduction options that we're talking about today.
Yeah. So with adrenal fatigue, the key is to stop exhausting your hormones. That's even more important than eating for your hormones. Stop exhausting them. And so by knowing that choice is the cornerstone of it, and then what you do with those choices as far as implementing power posing and purposeful movement and exercise and yoga and meditation and matching the amount of stress you have with the equal amounts of de-stressing is the most important thing. It's just absolutely vital. So thank you guys for attending. For those of you, we get the question all the time as far as where to call, but 316-636-2888 to make an appointment for those that need extra help.
Yeah.
But otherwise, keep watching and please share this with your friends and like it and ask lots of questions.
And check out the old videos if you didn't get your questions answered tonight. Check those out at his page.
Yeah, we got quite a few videos now.
So.
And we're not sure. I don't think we decided on what we're going to do next month.
No, we have not. We have not.
Yeah.
But next week, though, we're going to talk a little bit more about thyroid.
Right. So we'll talk about thyroid next week. So let your friends know, and then we'll let you know what we're going to talk about next month. I'm thinking maybe pain, how to get rid of pain, or something like that.
That could be. Yeah, that's a good thought.
So if you guys have suggestions, let us know.
Yeah, if there's anything you want us to talk about, throw it out there.
Cool.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you.